Thanks, everyone, for attending this live DABCC webinar with the good folks over at Pancetera, and we're going to talk about the Pancetera solution. This is really, really cool stuff, guys, and I hope that I hope you enjoy it. And definitely, when we get all done with this, feel free to go over to Pancetera's website and download an eval of this and throw it into your VMware ESX vSphere environments and have some fun. This is neat technology. I've been playing around with it for about 6 months now, and I've thoroughly enjoyed myself with it. I use it almost daily nowadays, too, to do backups and things like that. So we'll get into that. Today we have a presenter from Pancetera, Mitch Haile, and Mitch is going to go through this, the PowerPoint, a little bit of PowerPoint with you guys, and then we're going to dive into a really deep webinar. Mitch is also the man. He is the one really responsible for this technology. So if you have any deep technical questions, he is the guy to ask. So feel free to ask those. And on that note, let's just dive directly into this. Mitch, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Yeah, thanks for hosting us.
Well, thank you. So before we get into the webinar, I always like to start these things off the same way I start off my podcast and the videos that we do, and that is ask you a couple quick questions. So for the first question, who are you, Mitch, and what do you do over at Pancetera?
Well, so I've been doing software professionally for about a decade now. Spent a lot of time doing cellular at Motorola, and then moved into storage when I joined Data Domain in 2002. I was an early engineer there and spent 4 great years at Data Domain. Left a little bit before the IPO to start a security company with my co-founder Greg, and while we were looking at some of the security problems and how to make a cloud-based security solution cheap, we sort of stumbled into how do you back up VMware, and why do you have these silos of data inside a VMware environment, and why isn't that more accessible using standard protocols such as NFS or CIFS? So we sort of took a detour there and ended up doing Pancetera.
Sounds good. I have another question, quick question before we get going, and this is a question I get from time to time. What does the name Pancetera mean? Where did you guys come up with that?
So it's actually kind of a funny story. Greg wanted a name that sounded something like Pandora, and we were trying to come up with names, and we couldn't. My girlfriend was an English major in college and is a professional librarian, and so we just flipped the problem to her and said, come up with something that sounds like Pandora, sounds cool, and .com is available. And so she came up with the name Pancetera. We thought it was Pancetera, and it actually comes from Pandora plus et cetera. But as we were out talking to folks, people were saying Pancetera back to us. So we changed the pronunciation of Pancetera.
Very cool, very cool. Well, on that note, let's dive into this webinar with you guys, and let's see this Pancetera technology that you guys come up with.
Okay, great.
Sound good?
Yep.
Okay, it's all yours. And definitely, guys out there listening, please ask questions. As we go through this, ask them and just use the Q&A piece of GoToWebinar, and we will we'll get those questions answered. So, Mitch, it's all yours.
Great. So today I'm going to quickly drill through some PowerPoint slides, and then we'll hop into a demo, and then we'll have time for extra questions at the end if there are any. But like Doug said, go ahead and ask questions during the presentation, and we can stop and take those questions. So with that, I just want to start with a little build-up here about what we see happening in the field in the IT environment. So folks are out there buying storage to put those virtual machines on. You got a lot of virtual machines on a lot of storage. And then folks realize, aha, we need to install agents to back these things up. And maybe there's some antivirus agents. So you end up with a lot of agents in here that may start moving these virtual machines around. Want to copy them across the WAN, do storage vMotions, copy them to different subnets or from test and dev into production or back again. So there's all this data movement that's going on, and you end up with a pattern like this. There's a lot of uncoordinated I/O that's going on inside of virtual machines and around virtual machines for what we call maintenance workloads. So these things like backing up or doing antivirus scans or doing security audits, all kinds of things like that are causing a lot of I/O inside the guest that ultimately hits the shared storage underneath. And so we see customers spending a lot of money on storage just to solve, these I/O problems that because there's a lot of contention, there's no coordination. I was talking to a hospital in Michigan that spent $300,000 on additional HP storage just for their antivirus scans. They didn't need the capacity, they just needed throughput for antivirus. So there's all these VMs that are going on, running out there, and there's all this I/O that's happening from these agent-based workloads. So that's the problem that we're looking at. What we're doing is building a file system that represents all of that storage, all those virtual machines in that VMware environment, and turning that into what we call a synthetic file system. And what that means is that this is a file system view that you can use just like any other file system, but there's no storage underneath. So you can go in and look at your virtual machines and do maintenance workloads on them through a secondary data path, and do this in a way that you can coordinate, you can manage, and you can do this with reduced I/O when you're doing image moves of virtual machines. So we think that's pretty cool. So ultimately what Pancetera Unite is it's a file system, and it's shipped as a virtual appliance. As you can see in this previous slide, it's sitting here just alongside other virtual machines. It's very easy to, yeah, go ahead.
This is Bart. I went ahead and popped up the hypervisor poll because this is roughly when we talked about doing it. So let's go ahead and kind of run through the poll, and then we can dig back into the slides. So audience, if you would, just let us know what hypervisors you're using. We're really curious, right? We see a lot of VMware, but we're also kind of curious to see if you're looking at KVM or Xen or Hyper-V, or kind of looking at other options. So we'll give you a few minutes to click. Actually, 78% of you have voted, so if a few more of you want to click, we can go ahead and close out the poll and look at the results and keep going.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting. A year ago, we thought that Hyper-V would be out there in a pretty big way by now, and we just haven't been seeing it in customers we've been talking to. Usually when we bring up Hyper-V, we get a laugh or something like that. So, we're a little puzzled by that. And I see on the poll here, 25% of you guys say that you're looking at or considering Hyper-V. So that's interesting. We'd definitely love to chat with you guys about that in more detail. We're seeing a lot more interest in KVM. Earlier this year, we didn't think that KVM was, really even that interesting, but we're seeing it more and more now. So ultimately, where we're going to take this, today we do VMware, but we are also going to be adding support for KVM and Hyper-V and Xen, and giving folks a way to not only back up or move virtual machines out of a VMware environment, but also be able to do that out of a Xen or KVM environment through the same interface that we're providing on the VMware side. So we think that's going to let people get a lot more flexibility around how they deal with backing up or managing virtual machine images or the files inside those images across a variety of hypervisors. We expect that other hypervisors will come into the IT environment through sort of test and dev, just like VMware did, and gradually as those vendors get more trust and more sophisticated in their feature set, there's going to be a greater footprint. And we see folks are going to have multiple sets of hypervisors, but you would still want to be able to move those VMs around or transform them from a Xen VM into a VMware VM using the same interfaces. VMware Converter is never going to support Xen, right? I think we can be pretty clear about that. And VMware Converter is not going to let you take VMs out of VMware and put it into Xen, but this is a file system that would let you just drag and drop VMs from one hypervisor to another. So yeah, thanks for doing the poll question. So the feedback that we're getting from customers is that they love the accelerated image I/O, they love the smart read capabilities, What they even love more than that is being able to get at their VMs without having to do a data store browser or log into the ESX console and do SCP or use strange third-party tools. We're literally giving you a way to just NFS or CIFS mount all that storage that's out there without doing any kind of staging, any kind of copying in order to make that mount available. And I'll show this to you in the demo where we've got a variety of LUNs and other types of storage back in the VMFS land, but you're able to see that all in one view and dig through that in folders and files just like you would any other file system. So here's a little screenshot of what I'm going to show you in the demo. And you can see over here we've got a network share that we've mounted, and we've got folders here. And these are ESX servers. And inside those servers, there are virtual machines. And you can see that this list here is the same as what I've got in my VI client here. And of course, we give you ways to organize these folders. You don't have to organize them by ESX server. You can organize them by vCenter group or create, these are Mitch's important virtual machines or what have you. So we give you a lot of flexibility in terms of how you want to look at these things and organize them. And then you can see inside this particular virtual machine, which is actually the Pancetera appliance, we've got the VMDK, the data VMDK here, the metadata for that VMDK, and the VMX file. And we present those in a way that's ready to be backed up. It's ready to be recovered. The VMDK metadata and the VMX file here are not quite the same as what's back in the VMFS land. It's ready to be copied somewhere and used as a new virtual machine. So Bart, I'm thinking, why don't we go ahead and do the next poll question. We've got a couple of questions that we want to ask that don't necessarily line up with the slides. So it looks like the poll is up. So if you guys don't mind. So this poll question is about having users being able to access this file system share and copy VMs out. And we've heard that that's useful for some situations where you got a lot of test or dev VMs where IT doesn't want to get involved with having to back those up for the user, but the user knows he's going to make a scary change and he wants to go ahead and grab that VM and just dump it onto his desktop, maybe play around with it on, say, VMware Workstation, and then push it back into ESX, for example. Or maybe he just wants to grab a copy of it without any help from IT and just have that pristine state before he goes and installs the latest updates for an application or runs some kind of file system check or what have you. So it looks like that is of interest to some of you folks. So thank you very much for taking the time there. So this is just a little picture showing how our file system and applications interact with us. So once again, we're the self-contained virtual appliance. And we've got two technologies in there. One we call Smart Read, which is this set of algorithms around accelerating copies of images, and that being the data VMDK. And then Smart View, which is really just the file system itself that we're exposing up to some client computer. We're doing vStorage on the back end, but we're more than just a vStorage adapter because of these accelerations and because of the file system technology on top, right? So I mean, there's no other way in the world that you can go out and do this kind of thing, say, mount your VMFS over CIFS, right? Nobody else gives you that. And then you can use a variety of applications on this file system, such as rsync, or maybe you want to use a backup tool like, say, CrashPlan to back up into the cloud, or just drag and drop VMs onto your desktop. Optionally, we integrate with vCenter. We don't require vCenter. If you've got a test environment that you want to play with us without vCenter, we support that. But we do integrate with vCenter. You can use our GUI inside of vCenter, or you can use our GUI from a web browser. And of course here we're just showing one ESX server, but one Pancetera appliance can span many ESX servers. It's not limited to just one. In fact, we built a little bit of a clustering management on top of our software to enable folks who have very large environments to still manage a group of Pancetera appliances as a single unit. So you can actually install multiple Pancetera appliances, mostly for throughput purposes, or maybe you have different groups that need different sets of VMs or different SLAs around moving certain VMs, and you want to be sure that you can hit those. So you can install groups of us either on the same ESX server, and they can reach out to other ESX servers, or they can be spread out where it makes sense. Here we got a picture of a cloud showing that one of these Pancetera appliances is actually off in another office or in a colo facility or what have you. But ultimately, you can manage the Pancetera group from a single Pancetera node, and that could be one that participates in data or not. So, a number of customers that are using this find this to be pretty powerful, and we're actually pretty unique as a startup to have this level of functionality so early. Most folks, most startups that are building heavy data applications really focus on just the data path, and that's great, and we do that too. But we're also very focused on ease of use and making this very accessible and easy to deal with. So we talked a lot about moving VMs and backing up and rsync and things like that. But one of the things that we found with our technology is that we can really enhance WAN accelerator products. And so if you want to move virtual machines from, say, your headquarter data center out to some branch office, having Pancetera, which is over here on the left as a virtual machine, be the facilitator for that. Because we're exporting CIFs, anybody who's speeding up CIF transfers, for example, gets a lot of benefit. We're actually seeing something on the order of a 10x faster improvement of copying Windows 2008 virtual machines around. And you'll note that you don't need Pancetera on the other side. You just need Pancetera on one side, and this just accelerates the hell out of your VMDK movement. You can also do it the other way, where you've got the VMDKs at a remote office and you want to bring them back into the central office. So this is interesting if you want to do like a WAN backup, or if you had some virtual machine in a remote office that you need to tweak or tune, or you want to do some kind of intensive operation with that, and you want to pull them back into the data center and do some things with it before you push it back out. Or maybe you're just trying to consolidate all your VMs into a single place. So we see a lot of opportunity and a lot of use cases falling out of that. All right, why don't we take a little break and do the next poll question. So one question that we're wondering about is sort of compliance and e-discovery or search kinds of operations that whether or not folks are doing that on physical desktops or virtual desktops, either one today, and whether or not that's interesting. So go ahead and take a few seconds there to click on the multiple choice there. So this is a quote that's up on our website. IBM actually did a press release around us with this customer story. So one of the things, because we are just a file system, and all standard backup software knows how to back up file systems, we just integrate out of the box. So if you're using backup software that doesn't take advantage of vStorage, or you're finding the vStorage option isn't getting you the performance that you hope that you would get, you might take a look at Pancetera, because we've got optimizations that sit on top of vStorage, and we've also got just out-of-the-box integration with backup software such as TSM. So this fellow has been doing TSM backup work, I think, for on the order of 20 years. He's very experienced, and he's really enjoying using Pancetera TSM. And I'll show you a little bit more about that and how easy it is to integrate sort of legacy applications with the virtual machine storage. So these are results from another customer, and you can see that these are stats around transferring VMDKs with and without Pancetera. And the cool thing here down here is 20 hours is what it was taking this customer to move data before he added Pancetera into the mix. With Pancetera, he's down to 4 hours. So that's a 5x improvement. These are real-world results, and we're pretty excited about those kinds of numbers. I forget how many poll questions we have, Bart. Do we want to do the next one before we jump into demo? Or while we jump into demo? Okay.
Yeah, sure. Let me go ahead and set up for that. So this is just more of a general question. We're kind of curious what you guys are doing for primary storage in your virtualization environment, kind of what solutions are working best for you. We've seen a lot of interest in NetApp. Obviously, a lot of folks have EMC. And then HP just bought 3PAR, and part of 3PAR's positioning, at least, was in the virtualization space. So kind of curious about that. And we'll leave this up for a few more seconds and then kind of close it out. And I promise this is our last question, so we'll get into the demo. And feel free to post questions up in the questions section or via chat, right? Because we're really interested in essentially sharing and finding out where we can help and kind of leverage what we're doing with you guys. So just out of curiosity, a lot of NetApp fans here. So not that surprising, right? But relative to EMC, seeing a pretty strong response from Network Appliance and then a lot of other. And unfortunately, we're just limited to a handful of choices when we post these questions. But very much appreciate your taking the time. And now back to you, Mitch, with the demo environment.
Before we get into that, I do have a question from the audience. You guys ready to take a question from the audience?
Sure, Mitch, are you on mute? I can't actually hear you.
Oops, sorry about that. Yes, we are absolutely ready.
Okay, excellent, excellent. I was going to say, are we ready to find Mitch? We are using Data Core SAN Melody SAN storage. Ooh, I like it. What improvements can Pancetera bring to us?
Okay, so that's a great question. So we actually, from the perspective of the storage underneath, we don't care if it's SAN or NFS or some kind of direct attached scenario. The improvements come around being able to reduce I/O around pulling those VMs off of that storage. So a lot of people, when they talk about reduced I/O or increased efficiency around backup and that kind of thing, what they're really referring to is improving the amount of space that a backup took when it hit the target. So better utilization of disk, which is sort of the data main story, or better compression on tape, or those kinds of things. What we're actually looking at is reducing the I/O requests on the primary storage to just request the necessary blocks required to get an image moved. So we see, many times a 4x or an 8x reduction in the amount of random I/O required to do movement of VMs, which means that those disk heads are now available to do what you actually bought the disk to do, whether it's run Oracle or serve up a couple hundred desktops or those kinds of things, right? You don't buy storage to back it up. You buy storage because you need to run an application, but backing it up is just part of having an IT infrastructure. So it's really about increased efficiency and accessibility of the VMs, regardless of the type of storage that's underneath. Does that make sense? If you have more questions around that, I'm happy to drill into that more.
You bet. It made sense to me, and hopefully it made sense to the gentleman asking the questions. Definitely, guys, as we go through this demo, and before that, if you have any more questions relating to what these guys have already chatted about, please let us know. But if not, we're going to dive into the demo right now, and then feel free to ask questions there too.
Yeah, definitely don't be bashful.
Yeah, questions is the best part. I mean, I love the questions. That's what I really enjoy, right? And we got a good, Mitch, very sharp guy. He can answer anything. So I always like saying that, and then I get a question, that's support question, right? Yeah, I got this problem with my ESX server. Do you think you can help me here? I'll filter those out for you, Mitch. Don't worry.
Okay, I appreciate it. So here we're looking at just a Windows desktop that's sitting in a little demo environment that we've got set up. And we've got a network share that we've mounted here. And this network share is coming out of the Pancetera appliance. And when we open that up, we can see folders here that represent the various ESX entities out there. And as we drill into those folders, we can see more folders that actually represent the virtual machines. So if I show that to you in a tree view, we can actually see this first level folders, and then we can go in and look at particular virtual machine, and then we can actually just do normal operations like you would expect with any piece of storage. We could even drag and drop this virtual machine, which may be running, onto some other storage and start copying it here. So what we're doing right now, there's a little bit of lag while we get ready to start that copy, and then we start moving that data. And we're doing this in just Windows standard tools. We haven't installed any drivers on Windows. We haven't done anything special to the computer that's accessing this. And I can actually show you that virtual machine over here in vCenter, if I can find it. Not quite sure which virtual machine that was. So let's see. But you can see here in this folder list, these folders match up with the virtual machine names. And then if I go in there, this particular virtual machine has got two different VMDKs, and they just appear as separate files. So we got two 40 gig files here. And meanwhile, we're just copying this virtual machine out. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel that. And I want to show you the effects of Smart Read. So we've got two virtual machines here to demo the difference that Smart Read makes. So we've got a WinSlow here, which is a copy that we'll do without Smart Read turned on. I think this thing usually hits something like 15, maybe a little bit faster megas a second. And we're doing a little bit better than 15 today. And you can see that over here on the right, this is a small little virtual machine. It's 500 megs, 512 megs. And now we've got a virtual machine where we've got Smart Read turned on. We'll copy that. And you can see over there on the right, it's also a 500 meg virtual machine. You can see this is dramatically faster. In this environment, I think we saw about 2x improvement of speed. And a number of our customers see performance at least that good or even better compared to the old way of doing things. So we've only looked at this in terms of a file system that's sitting out here so far, and that's really the main way that you use the product, is through the file system. But we do have a nice GUI, and you can see it's a Virtual Center tab. You can also access it through a web browser. You don't have to use it through Virtual Center, but if you do have Virtual Center installed, you probably want to use it that way. And again, here are the list of virtual machines that I've got out there, and I can affect some configuration around those. I hit this configure button, and then I can turn on VSS. I can have the file system quiesce, and I can turn on and off having these things exported. I've also got the ability to go in and create folders. These are the current folders. The default layout is that we just show the VMs with the ESX hosts that they're associated with, but you could create a folder, like Mitch important VMs or something. And I can change the name, of course. I can also see how many VMs are in that folder right now. This is handy if I'm doing some kind of big data movement and I want to set up multiple streams and manage those, with high efficiency from the file system perspective. I can do that. So this is the GUI, and it's very straightforward, very easy to deal with. I'm actually going to jump over and show this to you again in Windows here, or sorry, in the web browser, just so we have a little bit more screen real estate. So installing Pancetera, it's distributed as an OVF, and we've got a configuration wizard here that pops up the first time you boot it. Installing an OVF is just as simple as in Virtual Center saying deploy OVF appliance and pasting in a URL. Once you boot, point the web browser at this, you get this wizard. Some very simple configuration about where the ESX servers or the vCenter server that you want to put in. Very simple to set up both STIFs and NFS. The normal sorts of things that you would expect. So you can use this from either a Linux system or some other Unix as well as Windows. So some customers at TSM, they got AIX as their backup appliance, and they just mount us onto the AIX machines, and away they go. And of course, all the usual things that you would expect in any kind of appliance, whether it's physical or virtual, setting up NTP and configuring reports. We have a nice software update system. All the updates are online. Just pull those things down. No downloading patches manually and trying to twiddle them around. It's very, very straightforward. We've spent a lot of time working to make this thing very, very easy to use. And it's easy to use on the, setting up the IP address and so forth as well. It's very straightforward. This is a Pancetera appliance that see. We have a number of them installed here. But, for those of you who have installed ESX or ESXi, we've spent a lot of time making this very similar to that experience. We've taken a page out of HP's book, always showing you the default username and password when you need to log in. So the first time you're coming in and you don't know what that default password is, it's right there. There's no Googling around for Pancetera default password. So this is very simple to deal with. Here is where I would add this appliance into a group of Pancetera appliances or establish this appliance as a master. We're not going to do that here in the demo environment, but I can show you that in the GUI here, we can give virtual machines. This column here refers to the node that that virtual machine appears on in the Pancetera group. So it's very easy to scale up your footprint of Pancetera appliances to accommodate very high bandwidth situations. You know, we've got a couple of customers that have found they only need about 4 appliances to achieve very high throughput. So what questions are there?
Yeah, I have a question for you. You answered my big question, that is, what does it take to install? I love when people do demos and they come with this, all pre-canned demo, and it's like, okay, that looks all fine and dandy, but what does it take to get to the point where you're at, right? And you guys, it's just simple as downloading a virtual appliance using the OVF format, and away you go, pretty much. Then when I first started playing with Pancetera, you guys didn't even have the GUI. It was just as simple as mapping a drive and going. In fact, I never use GUI because I just don't need it. It's although it adds a bunch of power to it, right? It's really nice to have it. But I just set up my backup that's on my personal machine, and I'm backing up my my VMs. I mean, it's that powerful, right?
Yeah, I mean, have done a lot of user interface work in my past days, but honestly, the best GUI is one that you don't need.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you asked that question, because this is actually, on our support site, this is the install guide for how to get installed. We've got a little 2 or 3 minute video there that walks you through the steps if you get confused. But basically, you just click on these links and say, hey, I'm going to install vSphere 4. And this thing just shows you screenshot by screenshot. Here's the URL to grab. You notice that when I clicked, it automatically selected all in this text box. So now all I have to do is dump it onto my clipboard, go back to my VI client, and literally paste it in there. And then there's a few things that come up about, how many CPUs do you want to give this appliance, and here's a license agreement. But this is very, very straightforward. I mean, literally people can install this by themselves in 15 minutes or less. The hardest part is figuring out, which server do I want to put it on, and what IP address do I have available to give to it.
The next question is it does it support multi-homing? So multiple networks and multiple interfaces.
Yes.
For example, I'll give you an example. A lot of hosting companies require public and private NICs nowadays.
Yeah, and we've got a number of customers that are using that. This particular version of the software in our demo environment is a little out of date, and it doesn't have that particular feature exposed in a nice user interface, but it's very easy to set that up under the hood if you were running an older version, because this is all Linux under the hood in terms of, so our system administration stuff is straightforward Red Hat stuff. We've abstracted all of that away, so you don't need to know anything about Linux or care that it's Linux underneath, but more advanced scenarios are available and can be tweaked by our support team as needed. And we're always working on adding those features into the GUI. So.
Perfect. Which flavor of Linux are you guys using?
We're actually using Red Hat.
Now, are the interfaces exposed then? If somebody is a Red Hat guru, can they get down there and dirty?
We really see this as a toaster. We're really taking the NetApp approach of this as a toaster. NetApp these days does require a lot of playing under the hood, but I think the original philosophy was spot on. So what we're trying to do is, if a support situation comes up that something like that is needed, we can go into the toaster and tweak it. But what we really want to do is add user interface for those places where people want to play inside the toaster.
Makes sense. What about scalability? Let's say somebody has, 1,000, virtual servers. How does that work? How do you guys scale, and how do we design for scale?
Yeah, so it really comes back to, let's see, this picture here. So you can imagine there's a lot of terabytes of storage out here in this picture. And, may you need 5 Pancetera appliances to deal with moving those VMs around It's a very similar model to adding more tape drives, right? You don't make your LTO tape drive faster. You add 3 more of them. But we can reach across multiple hypervisors into the storage, and pull those things out. You definitely do not need 1 Pancetera per hypervisor. You could do that. Our customers are finding they don't need to get the performance that they need.
Sounds good. What about file level, this is a question from the audience, what about file level restore within the VMDK? How does that work? What does it look like?
Right. So there's a few options that we're exploring. We've got one piece in beta right now, which is we can pull the files out of an image. We can expose that up into another mount that you would see in CIFS, and you can browse through the file systems, whether it's Linux or Windows, inside of that guest and pull out files. And then we're currently talking to customers about how do we want to push those files back. There's a number of ways that we can do it, both while the VM is on and not on. I think what's very typical is that people want to do it while the VM is on, but the current model is you mount that recovery file system from inside the VM that you want to pull the files back into and drop those in. And we're working on some ways to make that a little cleaner. So yeah, if there's interest in that, I would be happy to talk to people offline. My contact information is here on the last slide. Definitely shoot me a mail, or these are some cities that I'm in quite a bit. And if anybody out there is in those cities, I'd be happy to meet up in person as well.
This is Kansas City a lot. Crazy.
Yes. You hop all over the place.
You're also on Twitter, too, and can you share your Twitter handle real quick?
I can. It's actually BWA Hacker. Yeah, we've also got a Pancetera account as well. So, yeah, definitely follow us on Twitter. I'm happy to interact with people about this on Twitter.
And I always like to ask the question, competition. There's a lot of people that might already have solutions. They might be looking at things, and they say, okay, well, why should I go with the Pancetera solution versus the competition? So, what's your response to that?
I think there's a few elements to that. So, one is about, our backgrounds, quite honestly. My co-founder, Greg, spent almost 10 years working at Legato very early on. Bart and I were both at DataMain early on. We've been doing storage a long time. We have a very deep knowledge and understanding of this space. So we've got a lot of experience and a lot of energy around developing the right features that people want. We've only been on the market a couple of months. We've gotten great customer traction. We're very, very excited about what we're doing. But we're also very pragmatic about we want to build products that people actually need. So we're very responsive to people saying, I need file level recovery, or I need a solution for my WAN scenario. So we're totally on board and very, very responsive with that. The other thing is, this accessibility is something that you cannot get with anyone else. Nobody else gives you a file system to you to bring, whether it's legacy apps or just do an rsync of your VMs while they're running, right? We're taking care of managing and dealing with all the complexity that is in any VMware environment around, I've got these snapshots, I got these disks, and all these LUNs, and then, I ran out of space, so I'm using some of my internal storage, and I don't have a way to access that from outside, and I want to bring in a VM or take a VM out, and I got to use a data store browser or some kind of tools or SFTP. That's just a tremendous amount of complexity for moving VMs or dealing with how do you get a VM from, one vCenter area to another, or you're doing storage vMotions, but does it always work? I've done so many, just, me running our small IT infrastructure, trying to move 100 gig VMs around, it takes a long time, and then sometimes you get 60% of the way in, and you get an error out of vCenter. It's like, well, great. Now what do I do? So, this ease of use and be able to move things around is just not anywhere else. You know, how do you rsync or point, you know, some kind of tool like Crash Plan or something at your VMs, or how do you, you know, move VMs with Riverbed more efficiently? You know, you just can't do it without Pancetera.
Are there types of workloads that work better with Pancetera than others?
Well, certainly we're starting with backup. You know, we see that as still a pretty big problem. We see people doing, you know, sort of mixing and matching a variety of backup products in their environments, and I think they're dealing with a lot of challenges around that. You know, if I want to use vStorage, you know, I might find that, you know, using the vStorage provided by my backup vendor isn't scaling the way I thought it would, or it's requiring a lot of, you know, extra Windows cost. You know, some customers need, you know, very large dedicated Windows boxes because most vendors are implementing this stuff on Windows. You know, the virtual appliance approach lets us completely wipe out that extra cost that's involved. So, you know, there's a lot of different scenarios around backup that are very interesting. The WAN stuff is also very interesting because part of the side effect of Smart Read is that we sort of scrub the VMDK while we're streaming it. And so you get better compression and better dedupability out of a VM that you've taken out of Pancetera. So if we do an MD5 sum of a VMDK that's coming out of Pancetera, and we compare that to an MD5 sum of what's on VMFS, they're not the same. But if you do an MD5 sum inside the OS of all the files in there and compare that to what's inside the VMFS, they will be the same. So we're not changing any of the data that's relevant, but we are changing things underneath the sheets that's leading to much better compression, whether you're going to tape or just zipping up a VM, or, you know, storing it on a data domain, or backing up with Avamar, or copying it with Riverbed. You know, there's all these dedupe technologies and vendors and products out there, and we're enabling those guys to get better utilization out of VMs that are coming out of us. So the WAN story is the second one that we're looking at. You know, we asked the e-discovery question earlier because we're sort of looking at that. We're seeing a lot of pain in very large organizations around e-discovery, and that's a problem that we can go solve.
You bet. No, if somebody wants to learn more about Pancetera and or download the eval, what do they need to do?
So it's very simple. You just go to our website, pancetera.com, of course. And there's some buttons on there. Try us out.
I love virtual appliances because they're just so simple to try out. You know, like I think 90% of my VMs on my on my ESX servers, they're all, you know, just things I'm trying out, right? It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and there's really, you know, there's very little risk, right? You can deploy us in a very small amount of test environment. If you don't like it, you right-click, delete, and say, I'm done with that. But chances are you're going to like it, and you're going to want more of it. So you can use this form by clicking on the Try Us Out button on the main page of our website. And, you know, we're just asking for a few pieces of information there. And, you know, we turn around the trial approval very quickly, usually in a couple hours. And then you get an account to our support site. And from there, you can just jump into this install guide. And, you know, you probably will not finish your cup of coffee before you've got this thing installed and up and running. So,
yeah, we actually did it the first time we did that. You sent it to me before, about 15 minutes before our conference call. And you said, here, go install this, be ready for the conference call, 15 minutes. And I was like, oh, my gosh, how am I going to do that? And I was ready in about 5 minutes. So, yeah, it's easy to install quick.
We've gotten great feedback from customers on that. You know, wow, this is the easiest thing I've installed all year. Yeah.
Like I said, I absolutely love virtual appliances. They just make it so simple. Last question, and unless there's any other questions from the audience, and definitely, guys, we're about ready to shut this webinar down. So if you have any more questions, please use the Q&A piece of GoToWebinar and let me know. But what is this? What is the cost? Can I ask price? How do you guys license it?
Right. So list price. Yeah, the pricing is based on sockets. We're sort of following the VMware model there. List price is $1,000 a socket per ESX server that you want to protect. And we think that's pretty competitive given some of the pricing structures that we're seeing out there for other vendors. So, yeah, I think it's a great deal.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Mitch, thank you so much. We don't have any additional questions from the audience. So thank you so much for your time today. As always,
yeah, thanks for having me.
Hey, thank you. As always, I'll go ahead and give you the last word and let you sort of close this thing out. But most importantly, as I always say, thank you to each and every one of you guys out there for listening. And there was a question, I haven't even answered it yet, did we record this and will it be posted on the site? Absolutely. So, if you enjoyed this, please tell a friend, and we'll get this thing posted up early next week to DABCC.com. It'll be on the homepage. And, of course, everyone that attended will get an email saying, hey, here's the download for you guys. So please share that with friends, colleagues, even people you don't like. Well, don't share it with people you don't like because you don't want them to enjoy the goodness of Pancetera. So on that note, Mitch, any last words?
I just want to invite anybody who's interested, try it out. Send me an email. I love sitting down and talking to customers. I'm always looking for an excuse to travel. So if you're not in Columbus or Kansas City or Boston or the Bay Area, maybe we can chat anyways. So I absolutely love hearing from the field. What are the problems that we need to go solve? So.
Absolutely, absolutely. And of course, Mitch, you can always come visit Sarasota, Florida. We have a really nice beach.
Absolutely.
One of the top 5 beaches in the
country. It's on my list.
I need to have a DABCC conference in Sarasota, and we can just have the conference on the beach. How much fun would that be?
That was my next question for you.
Thought about it, but I thought about if we do that, we're going to put it in Atlanta so that all of us Delta flyers can just fly straight to Atlanta and not hub. How great would that be? Nobody ever does things out of that. I always have to hub through Atlanta. I've thought about moving to Atlanta just to the point I don't have to hub through the place.
Yeah, I think at this point I would never live somewhere that didn't have a hub or a major airport.
Yeah. Okay, guys, thank you so much for listening to this webinar. I hope you've enjoyed it. As always, we have these DABCC webinars about every week. We have another one next week and another one the week after, another one. So we have about 4 or 5 more queued up, and we'll have more after that. So please stay tuned to www.dabcc.com/live for more DABCC webinars. And, of course, check out the Pancetera stuff. That is www.pancetera, Pancetera. You can see that on your screen, but if you're listening to this, let's say you're in your car or something, hopefully you're not browsing the web at the same time. So on that note, thank you guys so much for listening to this joint webinar with DABCC and Pancetera. Thanks, everybody.